On the morning of June 17, 2016, something strange started happening on the Ethereum blockchain. A trickle of transactions began withdrawing funds from one of its most ambitious projects, the DAO, a decentralized venture fund controlled not by people, but by code. The withdrawals weren't massive at first, just 258 Ether at a time, but they kept coming, again and again and again. Developers and DAO participants across the globe scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. Within minutes, the reality became clear. The DAO was being attacked, in real time.
What's going on?
Someone's draining funds.
By the time the Ethereum community fully grasped what was happening, more than $60 million worth of ETH had already been siphoned off by an unknown attacker. And because the DAO ran on a smart contract, a self-executing program deployed directly on the blockchain, there was no off switch. No one could intervene. The code was doing exactly what it was written to do. In the hours that followed, Ethereum developers would mount a frantic counterattack, but the damage had already sparked a crisis, not just of security, but of identity. A platform built on the idea of immutability, that the blockchain could never be changed, was now facing a moral and technical dilemma. Should they preserve the integrity of the code, or take the unprecedented step of rewriting Ethereum's history to reverse the hack? This is the story of the most important fork in Ethereum's history, and the $60 million exploit that forced a decentralized community to choose between its ideals and its survival. I'm Richard Enlow, and this is Proof of Stake. Today, the Ethereum Heist, the story of the 2016 DAO hack, a pivotal drama in the world of cryptocurrency. It's a tale of innovation and idealism colliding with reality, of decentralized governance tested under fire. In this episode, we'll explore how a high-stakes hack forced an online community to ask, is any principle truly immutable? Act 1. To understand why the DAO hack shook Ethereum to its core, we need to step back to the beginning, to what Ethereum is and what the DAO was meant to be. It's 2015, and a 21-year-old programmer named Vitalik Buterin has co-founded Ethereum, a new blockchain platform like Bitcoin but more ambitious. Ethereum isn't just digital money, it's a global computer anyone can program. Vitalik's idea is to let people run smart contracts, self-executing bits of code, on this blockchain. No banks or middlemen required, just pure automation. It's the dawn of decentralized apps and organizations.
And the most exciting applications of Ethereum are probably the ones that we have not even thought of. Now the question is, what will you build on top of Ethereum?
Early Ethereum believers are idealistic. They envision a future where organizations run autonomously, governed by code and the collective vote of participants. No CEOs, no central authority, just rules on a blockchain. Out of this ethos emerges the DAO, short for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, but at the time it was so singular, they just called it the DAO.
So decentralized autonomous organizations, they're this idea that you can have these kind of automatons that are written in code that's set on the blockchain and that are governed through, smart contracts. It could be like some voting mechanism. It could even be some kind of voting by prediction markets or, some other new thing.
The DAO is essentially a crowd-funded venture capital fund, but with no traditional management. It's a piece of software, a smart contract on Ethereum, created by a German startup called Slock.it, including developer Christoph Jentsch. Anyone anywhere can buy DAO tokens with Ether and become a member. Members then vote on proposals for projects to fund. If a project gets approved, the DAO automatically releases funds to it. In theory, it's democracy meets venture investing, fueled by crypto. The concept captures the imagination of thousands. When the DAO's token sale opens in April 2016, it becomes the largest crowdfunding effort in history at that time. In a matter of weeks, people worldwide pour about 12 million ETH into it. That was roughly $150 million back then, an eye-popping sum for a brand new experiment. Picture it. Developers, investors, crypto enthusiasts around the globe are buzzing. The DAO holds almost 14% of all Ether in existence. It's as if a futuristic mutual fund sprung up overnight, and anyone with a few Ether could join. For many, it wasn't just about profit, it was about proving a point, that decentralized governance could work. Code would allocate money fairly, guided by the token holders' votes. No corporation, no bureaucracy, just the wisdom of the crowd and the incorruptible blockchain. But with so much money at stake, the DAO also became a high-profile target. Behind the scenes, a few experts had started to worry about its complex smart contract code. Security researchers pointed out potential vulnerabilities even before launch. In fact, some in the Ethereum community raised red flags, subtle bugs that could be exploited. The warnings, however, didn't trigger immediate action. The DAO's code was out there, running as designed. Remember, in a decentralized project, there's no easy pause button. The creators believed the code was final and immutable once deployed. As excitement grew, only a handful of people truly understood the technical risks simmering underneath. Those risks would soon explode into the open. The optimism of the DAO's launch was about to meet a cold dose of reality. June 2016. Ethereum itself is barely 1 year old, and the DAO has been live for just a few weeks. Proposals are being discussed, votes cast, everything seems on track, until one summer morning, it all falls apart. On June 17th, the nightmare begins. Act 2. It's just past 7 a.m. in Germany when Christoph Jentzsch is awakened by that phone call from his brother. Half a world away in the US and elsewhere, other members of the DAO's online community rub their eyes and stare in disbelief at their screens. The DAO's funds, millions of Ether, are vanishing right before their eyes. In the DAO's Slack chat rooms, pandemonium. It quickly becomes clear. An attacker has found a bug in the DAO's smart contract. Exploiting this flaw, they initiate what's now known as a re-entrancy attack. In simple terms, the hacker found a way to repeatedly withdraw funds from the DAO many times in a single transaction before the system could update the balance. It's as if a bank's ATM let someone take out cash again and again from the same account, all in an instant, without ever noticing the account was emptying. Ether starts flooding out of the DAO's account and into an address controlled by the attacker. 100,000 ETH, 200,000 ETH. The numbers climb relentlessly with each call of the exploit. By the time Christoph and the others gather their wits, more than 3.6 million ETH have been siphoned, worth about $60 million at the time. The DAO's once mighty treasury is bleeding out. On exchanges, traders see the news and panic sell. Ether's price plunges by over 30% in hours, crashing from around $20 to under $15. Confidence in the entire Ethereum network is faltering. Years of effort and the fate of a nascent technology now hang in the balance. The attacker, whoever they are, hasn't gotten away with the loot just yet. And here's a twist. The stolen Ether is now sitting in what's essentially an escrow. You see, the DAO's code had a built-in failsafe of sorts. When someone split off with funds, which is what the hacker did, creating what's called a child DAO, those funds couldn't be withdrawn for 28 days. So the thief has to wait roughly 4 weeks before they can actually move or cash out the Ether they've taken. That buys the Ethereum community precious time, a small window to respond before the attacker can disappear with the money. But what can they do? The code itself is the problem, and it's supposed to be immutable, unchangeable. Developers and community members swarm into online forums and chat channels. Ideas fly back and forth. Some propose drastic measures like freezing the stolen funds or even reversing transactions. Others are adamantly opposed. This view resonates with the hardline crypto philosophy. Code is law. In their eyes, the DAO's investors took a risk on experimental code, and the code did exactly what it allowed. To them, intervening now, essentially rewriting the blockchain's history to undo the hack, would betray the very foundation of cryptocurrency, that no central authority can just change the ledger. Immutability is sacred. But on the other side, many are staring at catastrophe. Remember, the DAO held almost 15% of all Ether. If the attacker succeeds in cashing out after 28 days, they control a huge chunk of Ether, potentially enough to crash the market further or even exert influence on the network. And beyond the financial loss is the reputational hit. If Ethereum can't protect its biggest project from failure, confidence in the whole platform could evaporate. Very quickly, leading figures in the Ethereum community step forward to coordinate a response. Vitalik Buterin, though he wasn't directly involved in the DAO's creation, springs into action. In a public post, Vitalik writes, "We are working on a fix. First, a soft fork to freeze the attacker's funds with no rollback of transactions. Then later, a hard fork to give DAO token holders the ability to recover their Ether." A soft fork would mean changing Ethereum's mining rules temporarily so that the attacker can't move the stolen funds, essentially blacklisting that money. This approach wouldn't unwind any transactions. It just stops the thief from taking further action. It seems like a relatively conservative measure and gains broad support quickly. Vitalik and the core developers urge all Ethereum miners, the people running computers that validate transactions, to implement the soft fork as soon as possible. The community rallies. For a moment, it looks like the bleeding can be stanched without breaking any fundamental rules. Exchanges like Kraken and others even pause Ether trading at the Ethereum Foundation's request, trying to prevent the attacker from cashing out through an exchange. The clock is ticking, but Ethereum's developers appear to be on top of it. Behind the scenes, another dramatic effort is underway. A group of volunteer white hat hackers, think of them as digital vigilantes, start using the same exploit the attacker used, but for good. They race to drain the remaining funds from the DAO before the original hacker can. This Robin Hood group, as they're later called, manages to steal some of the money back, moving a large portion of what's left into a safe haven where the original attacker can't reach it. One of the DAO's community organizers, Griff Green, coordinates this effort in real time, his heart pounding as he executes the very hack that just threatened to destroy everything. "It was surreal," Griff later says. "We were basically robbing the bank after the bank robber hit it, trying to save whatever cash was still in the vault." The white hat hackers succeed in securing a significant chunk of the funds. They can't recover what's already in the attacker's clutches, but they stop more from being stolen. For a moment, there's a semblance of relief. The bleeding has slowed. But this is only a temporary victory. Even after the White Hat's intervention, the attacker's child DAO still holds roughly 1/3 of the original stolen Ether, around $40 million worth. That's still an enormous sum, and come mid-July, the attacker will be free to move it. The soft fork, if implemented, can freeze it for now, but then what? As Ethereum's developers push out the soft fork code to miners, an unexpected setback arises. Security researchers discover a flaw in the soft fork itself. In their rush to stop the thief, the developers introduced a new vulnerability. The plan to blacklist the attacker's transactions could open Ethereum to a denial of service attack on miners. Essentially, the very fix meant to protect the network might accidentally gum up the network. It's a shocking twist. The safe solution might not be safe at all. With only days to spare, they scrap the soft fork idea entirely. The community is back to square one, and time is running out. This leaves the nuclear option, the hard fork. A hard fork is a permanent, more drastic change to the blockchain's rules. In this case, the Ethereum leaders propose something unprecedented. Alter the Ethereum blockchain's history just enough to take back the hacker's money. In practice, that means writing new code that at a specific block number would transfer all the Ether stolen from the DAO into a new smart contract set up to let the original owners withdraw their funds. It's as if they plan to teleport the stolen money out of the thief's account and back to a secure account for the victims. Technically, it's straightforward for Ethereum's coders to write this patch, but philosophically, it's an earthquake. Blockchains are supposed to be immutable. What happens on the blockchain stays on the blockchain. If Ethereum does this hard fork, it would be overturning that principle in a very visible way. The community erupts into debate, now even more intense than before. On one side are the pragmatists, DAO investors who want their money back, Ethereum developers who see the hack as an existential crisis, and many users who worry that letting the hacker keep such a fortune would poison Ethereum's future. They argue that Ethereum is still young, too young to sacrifice itself on the altar of immutability. Vitalik Buterin voices empathy for both sides, but ultimately comes down on this pragmatic camp. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, his stance is clear. "I totally get both sides. The reason I support the fork is that Ethereum is still in its early development stage. It isn't fully formed. If we let this hack go, it could deeply undermine confidence in the platform before it even matures." To Vitalik and those agreeing with him, this is a one-time emergency. Ethereum can learn from it and move on stronger, but only if they right this wrong. Their rallying cry is essentially, "We must save the community, even if it means breaking the rules this once." On the other side, the idealists and code is law purists are horrified. To them, a hard fork bailout for DAO investors feels like a betrayal. It's not about sympathy. Many do sympathize with the victims. But they worry, if you set the precedent that when something goes wrong you can just rewrite the ledger, where does it end? Today it's a hack. What if tomorrow a government pressures Ethereum to censor transactions or confiscate someone's funds and points to this event as justification? An influential Bitcoin community member, known by the pseudonym Whale Panda, writes a scathing blog post titled The Unethereal Fork. In it he says, "A fork in this case is unethical. It goes against everything that crypto stands for." Many in the Bitcoin and broader crypto world nod in agreement. To them, Ethereum's willingness to tweak the past looks like a slippery slope toward centralization and arbitrary control, the very things blockchain tech was supposed to avoid. The divide is not just philosophical, it's turning emotional. In forums and chat rooms, arguments rage. Threats are made. Some users vow to abandon Ethereum entirely if the fork happens. Others say they'll hard fork even if the main network doesn't, to reclaim the money. To gauge the community's true sentiment, an impromptu vote is arranged. Not a traditional vote, but a blockchain-based one using a mechanism called carbon vote. Every Ether holder can signal support or opposition to the hard fork by sending a transaction, essentially one vote per ETH they own. It's an imperfect measure. Not everyone votes, and big holders have more weight, but it provides a sense of where the majority stands. The results pour in. The vast majority of votes cast are in favor of the hard fork. It seems most active Ethereum participants are willing to do this, however painful, to rescue the funds and move forward. With that informal mandate, Ethereum's core developers, clients, and miners prepare to execute the hard fork. Still, it's not guaranteed smooth sailing. Implementing a hard fork requires coordination. Miners have to update their software to a new version of the Ethereum client that contains the hard fork code. If a significant number of miners don't update, either by protest or neglect, the network could split into two incompatible chains. In effect, Ethereum could clone itself at the moment of the fork. One version with the hack erased, and one version that keeps chugging along as if nothing happened. The fork is scheduled for block number 1,920,000, expected on July 20th, 2016. As that block approaches, Ethereum nodes around the world face the decision moment. Everyone is on edge. Will the community truly stick together, or will this event actually break Ethereum into rival camps? And then, the chain splits. Act 3. The hard fork is deployed. In an instant, history has bifurcated. On the new Ethereum chain, block 1,920,000 executes the special fork logic. The hacker's holdings from the DAO are transferred out and placed into a withdrawal contract. DAO token holders will later be able to claim their Ether back, minus what the hacker already took. It's done. The money is effectively teleported out of the attacker's reach. On this chain, it's as if the hack's damage has been reversed, erased from the ledger by community consensus. The DAO investors breathe a sigh of relief. Their funds are not lost forever after all. The nightmare is over, or so it seems. But there's another reality playing out simultaneously. On the original chain, at block 1,920,000, nothing special happens. It just continues recording transactions normally, including the hacker still holding those 3.6 million ETH in the DAO's child contract. A portion of the community, fed up with what they see as an unjust intervention, sticks with this chain. They refuse to update to the forked software. To them, this chain, unaltered by any bailout, is the true Ethereum. Very quickly, this parallel version gains a name, Ethereum Classic. Ethereum has split in two. For the first time, a major blockchain community divided over a matter of principle. In the immediate aftermath, there's confusion. Which Ethereum is the real one now? Exchanges initially pause trading to figure out what to do. Soon, most exchanges decide to list both tokens, ETH for the new fork, the one that reversed the hack, and ETC for Ethereum Classic, the one that did not. Traders now assign value to each. In the days following the fork, Ethereum, the new chain, maintains a strong majority of the community's support. The majority of developers, dApps, and users stick with it. Its price stabilizes and in fact begins to recover, reflecting relief that the hack crisis was resolved. Ethereum Classic, meanwhile, attracts a minority who champion it as the keeper of the true vision of immutable blockchain. ETC initially has value mostly due to speculators and principled objectors. Some thought it would fade away, but it doesn't die. It persists, a constant reminder of the schism. The ideological rift is bitter. On social media, heated words are exchanged. Pro-fork Ethereum supporters argue that without the fork, Ethereum might have collapsed under the weight of the DAO disaster. Anti-fork voices accuse Ethereum of sacrificing integrity, sneering that it's now a mutable chain subject to human whims. Trust, ironically, is both restored and shaken, depending on whom you ask. Years later, Griff Green, one of the white hat hackers, reflected on the community's choice. "We spent 2 months fighting that hack. It consumed the whole Ethereum ecosystem. In the end, the hard fork was like cutting off a gangrenous limb to save the patient. It was painful, controversial, but it let us move on." Vitalik and the Ethereum leadership doubled down on messaging that this was a one-time emergency fix. They assured users that Ethereum was not going to make a habit of rewriting history. The circumstances had to be truly exceptional. And indeed, in the years that followed, there have been many hacks and failures on Ethereum, some even larger in dollar terms. But never again has there been a serious proposal to hard fork simply to reverse a theft. The DAO set a precedent that the bar for such intervention is extremely high. Here's Christoph Jentsch describing the fix that occurred within the new fork.
Thanks to some luck and how Ethereum is constructed, it was possible to only make a change in the DAO-related contracts. Basically, all the other apps were continuing. You could transfer Ether, and no transaction has been reverted. Only everything related to a DAO, you would be able to was moved into a new smart contract where everybody who had DAO tokens could send DAO tokens in and get Ether back. This was the change at a certain point in time. So it did not touch any of the other apps, which was super important. Like if, for example, let's take Mt. Gox. If for reverting Mt. Gox, you would need to revert the chain in history. This is, of course, catastrophic, and nobody would ever even think about doing this. For Ethereum, you could only change the history kind of this one application. Not even history, just the future, to be more precise. So it was a little bit different than what sometimes people think it was. And also, luckily, it was not a precedent. People at the time worried that this was set a precedent, that every time a hack happened, they would call for a hard fork. After that, we had much bigger hacks. Look at the Polkadot multisig. Enormous amounts of Ether and many other hacks, and nobody seriously considered a hard fork ever again after the DAO. So it was luckily not a precedent.
In the aftermath, Ethereum implemented changes to avoid a repeat of this saga. The code vulnerability that made the DAO hack possible, that reentrancy bug, became one of the best-known pitfalls to avoid in smart contract development. Security audits for smart contracts became far more common. The community learned the hard way that moving fast and breaking things can be catastrophic when tens of millions of dollars are on the line. Caution was reintroduced into the frenetic pace of blockchain innovation. There were other consequences too. The sheer size of the DAO and its spectacular failure caught regulators' eyes. In 2017, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission investigated the DAO and declared that its tokens had been securities, subject to federal securities laws. This report sent shockwaves through the crypto industry and influenced how later projects conducted coin offerings. The DAO's legacy shaped not just technical practices, but legal and financial frameworks around crypto. And Ethereum itself? After some volatile weeks, it emerged from the crisis bruised but alive. By the end of 2016, Ethereum was still standing, and over the next year it experienced an enormous boom as new applications and ICOs exploded on the platform. It's arguable that without resolving the DAO hack, Ethereum might not have gained the momentum it did in 2017 to become what it is today, the backbone of a decentralized finance and crypto economy worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The hard fork, for all its controversy, gave Ethereum a second chance to prove itself. Meanwhile, Ethereum Classic carried on in parallel, a smaller community with the motto "Code is Law" emblazoned in its ethos. ETC's existence ensured that the debate about immutability versus governance never fully went away. In fact, Ethereum Classic itself faced major security breaches later, like 51% attacks on its network, underscoring that no path is without struggle. Some former Ethereum users to this day remain staunch advocates of ETC, arguing that the original Ethereum betrayed decentralization by intervening. The two Ethereums coexist, mostly peacefully, but philosophically miles apart. The DAO hack saga has become a legend in crypto circles, a cautionary tale, and a formative experience rolled into one. It raised questions that are still discussed whenever things go wrong in decentralized systems. How should a community govern itself in a crisis? Is the immutability of blockchain a holy principle, or are there higher values like protecting participants that occasionally override it? Who gets to decide the fate of a decentralized network when disaster strikes? In the end, the Ethereum community decided that their collective values, protecting the innocent, preserving the young network's future, outweighed the abstract ideal of never-changing history. But that decision wasn't unanimous, and the dissent gave birth to a new community dedicated to the opposite view. Both choices, to fork or not to fork, carried consequences that have rippled through crypto history. The story of the DAO hack is more than just a tale of a digital robbery. It's the story of a fledgling technology facing a trial by fire. Ethereum survived the flames, not unscathed, but tempered, with scars that reminded of the importance of trust, both in code and in people. It showed that even in a decentralized world, human judgment and consensus still play a pivotal role. In a way, code is law, but laws can change when a society, even an online one, deems it necessary. For Ethereum, the DAO hack was a defining moment that could have spelled its end. Instead, it became a beginning of a new chapter, one where Ethereum had to grow up, balance idealism with pragmatism, and ultimately choose what kind of community it wanted to be. Before we go, a quick postscript. For years, the identity of the DAO hacker was one of crypto's biggest mysteries, but that changed in 2022. Journalist Laura Shin, host of the Unchained podcast, published a book called The Cryptopians. In it, she claims to have identified the individual behind the DAO exploit after conducting a deep forensic investigation with the help of blockchain analytics firm Chainalysis. Her conclusion? The most likely culprit is Tobias Toby Lüdke, an Austrian-born programmer and former CEO of a crypto startup who was living in Singapore at the time of the hack. Shin's team traced a key transaction that went through a privacy service called Shapeshift, one that momentarily revealed a link to Lüdke's IP address. He has denied the accusations, but so far no formal charges have been brought forward and the full truth remains murky. Even if Shin's claim is accurate, it underscores a strange twist in blockchain's promise of anonymity. On a public ledger, the evidence never disappears. It just takes the right tools and the right moment for someone to follow the trail. As with many things in crypto, the past doesn't always stay buried. The DAO may be gone, but the search for truth never really ended. You've been listening to Proof of Stake. This was the Ethereum Heist, the story of the $60 million exploit that split a blockchain and shook a community to its core. If you liked the episode, tap subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who still believes code is law. Got a wild crypto story or theory? DM me at Proof of Stake Pod on X or Instagram. I'm always hunting for the next big mystery to unpack. Next time, we'll unravel another high-stakes tale from the world of decentralized drama. Until then, I'm Richard, and this is Proof of Stake.